and I will explain what that is with this example. Let's say we have a class phone. The phone class here has a area code, a number, and an extension, and a method called dial, which at this point will only just print dialing and then the area code in parentheses, the number, a little x, and the extension. And then I have a class that tests that phone. It's called call center. Within the main method, I have created a phone, and it's a phone. I set the area code, the number, the extension, and then dial, and we can see how this runs. Here it'll say dialing, the area code, the number that I gave, a little x, and the extension. Now, it's kind of painful to actually have to set all these things all the time. Say, for example, 773 happens to be one of the area codes in Chicago, and perhaps my call center is in Chicago, or the numbers that I have to dial are in Chicago, so I could probably just set the area code when I instantiate the phone. For that, one would create a constructor. If you do not know what that is, you should take a look at the video about constructors, but let's create a constructor here that could say public phone, and then we'll initialize the area code, area C, and what we will do here is we'll say the area code equals area C. Now, what this just did is that instead of creating a phone like this, I can create a phone just by giving it the area code, and I don't have to set it anymore. Which is a lot more comfortable because what happens here is that I'll run this. I get the same result. I dial the same exact number. But I set the area code to 773, so if I want to dial another number, I'll say p1.number equals 5674534, and then p1.extension equals 555. Okay, and then p1.dial again. So then I should see both these numbers, but both these numbers with the area code of 773. So you see my two 773 numbers, okay, being dialed. Now, it is the case that if I do not override the extension here, okay, say for example it doesn't have an extension, so the extension should be 0, right? If I do this and run and dial, the extension is still 213 because it's still legacy from the previous time when I set the extension. So for every number now I have to specify the number, and I would have to specify that I don't want any extension. So I compile this and run it, and you will see that then the second number does not have an extension. Okay, so we can do better than this in terms of code. And we do this by overloading methods. So this is the dial method, empty with no parameters. You'll use this if you know the area code, the number, and the extension. Now you might be tempted to create another method, public void dial number no extension, that probably takes in a number, okay? Or, yeah, probably takes in a number and basically says, whoops, takes in a number n, and basically says number equals n, so it sets the number, it sets the extension to 0, right? And then it calls dial. So let's see what this will do. Dial number no extension. That's my method if I want to dial with no extension. So for the first one, I just do this and dial. For the second one, what I will do is I will do p1.dial number no extension. That's my number. And because this method takes care of the extension, I don't need to specify, and then I call dial again. Whoops. Not dial, by the way. Just dial number no extension, right? That method takes care of the setting the extension to 0 and dialing this number with the current area code. So if I run it, I do get the same result. The first one has an area code and extension. The second one has an area code but no extension, because I change it like this. Now I could have another method here, public void. Say for example I want to dial to another area code. Dial number no extension with area code, right? Int area code, int number, right? And then I could create dialing methods for all the possible combinations. Now the problem that carries, I'm not going to finish this method, but the problem that carries is that for each instance of phone, or for each time I want to dial, I need to know which method exactly to call. And the more combinations, the more rarer the names, and so on and so forth. So there's a better way of doing this. Instead of dial number no extension, I just call this dial with a number. It's called the same thing as above, dial with a number, but this one has no parameters, this one has a number. If I then create another dial method, same number with area code and number, and what this will do is we'll say area code equals AC, number equals num, and then dial, and extension equals 0, extension equals 0, and then dial. And then I'm going to create a third method here, which is going to be public void dial int area code, int number, int extension. And what this will do is it'll set everything, right? It'll set what will it set? It will set area code equals AC, num equals number equals num, extension equals ext, and then dial. Okay, so now I have three ways of dialing. Okay, I have three ways of dialing that take, each one is the same number, same name of the method. They have the same return type and the same visibility here. The only thing that changes is the number of parameters, with no parameters up here, 1, 2, and 3 integers. Okay, I can have as many parameters as I want, as long as the names are the same, the return types are the same, the visibility is the same, and the number of parameters are different. Okay, so let's look at how our call center would look like now. Well, for phone 1, if I want to dial this number with extension 213, I will just dial it, I'll just dial 773, that number 213. If I want to dial a different area code, it might be 847, that's another Chicago area code, right? And that, for example, would be one call to dial, and I don't need these other two lines, right? Then another call to dial would be, for example, dial this number with no extension, and the area code is, say, the same area code. Dial that number, no extension. Now here, the name of this is dial again. Dial this number. And I can then say P1 dial, and then a number and an extension with the area code 847, for example, will be a number 3425678, and with extension 789, okay, or 999, just to have something very distinctive here. If I compile this and run it, I will have my three dialings. The first one with area code 847, the number and the extension 213. That's this one. The second one is 847, because that was the area code that got set up before. 5674534 and 0. extension 0 because there was no extension and that was the number. And then the other one has the same area code 847, but with this number and this extension, right? 847, whoops, sorry. I needed to provide an area code, 847, there you go. And this other number is the same, right? Now, if I wanted to just dial a different area code for a number, that's what I wanted to show up here actually. Let's say, for example, 773-789-6543. And then if I run this, now I do have what I was expecting. So this one is the same number with the previous area code. This one is dial a number with a new area code. And this one is dial a number with an area code and an extension as well. So let's look at the phone, the methods. The first one just dialed a number, right? Whatever number, well, I'm sorry, the first one just dials whatever number is set on the object. The second one dialed a number using the using the area code set on the object and setting the extension to 0. The third one would dial an area code and a number. Would dial a number given the area code, so it'll reset the area code, reset the number, and set the extension to 0. And the third one will dial an area code, a number, and an extension, right? Area code, number, and extension, and then call the dial method. Okay, those were the different methods that we created, and they're all called dial. And this is the beauty of it, because I can just use the same method and I can work with the information that I have. Now, a couple of caveats. If I wanted to create a method dial that used the, say, number and extension only, those would be the integers. There's already a dial with 2 integers. So I could not do that. Okay, I would need different kinds of parameters or different parameters altogether. So in the case of when you overload parameters, think of how you want to overload them, because if you have several possibilities with 2 integers, well, think of the one that you will use the most to overload it, because you cannot overload a method with the same number of parameters over and over again. The idea is that Java knows which version of dial to call based on the parameters that you pass. So if this one has 3 integers, it will come here and look for a dial that takes 3 integers. Oh, this is the one. Therefore, it's going to call this method. Okay? Just as a side note, another way of shortening this and calling methods within methods and all that would be, some people will just do this. This dial method is the most complete one, correct? It takes the area code, the number, and the extension. So some people will say instead the dial int num might actually just be a dial of the area code that's in the class, the num that was passed, right, and the extension is 0. This dial here, where you get the area code and the number, might actually call the bigger dial method, dial area code, number, and 0 for the extension, right? Therefore, the code is minimal, and the only one we need to ever modify is this one, if things go wrong, right? Think about this method. Think about these methods for the phone class. I'll just show you that the result is the same if you compile this and run. You will again see that here I changed the area code. Here I kept the previous area code and changed the extension to 0, and here I put everything in there. Although I initialized the phone with 773, this method overwrites all of that. Okay. If you wanted to use 773, you could have done something like this: dial 5432121. That would have dialed 773. But here, the minute I put 847 here, it changed the area code forever. Now here I change it back to 773, and so on and so forth. So with that, I think you have a good idea of what overloading means. The output of this program is this. Take a look at it, analyze it, and here's the phone class for you to analyze. Please try to replicate this and see how overloading works. You can also overload a constructor with many parameters. So one parameter takes the area code, another parameter might take a default number or a default extension and an area code, and so on and so forth.